Akbar the Great, Mughal Empire, 1556, age 13. Akbar's father fell down a staircase and broke his neck. The boy was 13. He inherited an army, a fractured empire, and a council of advisors who were certain they would be the ones doing the actual ruling. Within a few years, Akbar pushed them aside. Over the next half-century, he built one of the largest empires India had ever seen. He never learned to read. Baldwin IV the Leper, Jerusalem, 1174, age 13. His tutor noticed it first. The boy didn't flinch when something hurt his hand. It was leprosy. At 13, he became king of Jerusalem. At 16, he rode out against Saladin and won one of the most improbable victories of the Crusades, shattering an army 10 times the size of his own. He died at 23. By then, he no longer had a face. Elagabalus, Roman Empire, 218 AD, age 14. They brought him to Rome from Syria and told the Senate he was the bastard son of a murdered emperor. The Senate believed it. In 4 years, Elagabalus married a Vestal virgin, installed an Eastern sun god above Jupiter himself, and scandalized Rome so completely that his own grandmother arranged his murder. He was 18. They threw his body into the Tiber. Ptolemy XIII, Egypt, 51 BC, age 11. By Egyptian custom, he married his own sister. Her name was Cleopatra. 3 years later, he tried to overthrow her and lost, because Julius Caesar had chosen her side. Ptolemy fled. He drowned in the Nile at 15, trying to cross the river in golden armor. Peter the Great, Russia, 1682, age 10. They crowned 10-year-old Peter alongside his half-brother on a double throne, a throne with a hidden compartment in the back, so his older sister, the regent, could whisper instructions through a hole in the wood. 7 years later, he removed her from power and began rebuilding Russia with his own hands. He cut the beards off his nobles personally, learned shipbuilding by working in a foreign dockyard, and executed his own palace guard. Russia would never be the same again. Tutankhamun, Egypt, 1332 BC, age 9. At 9 years old, he reversed his father's religious revolution and gave Egypt back its old gods. He ruled for 10 years. He died at 19, perhaps from a broken leg, perhaps from malaria, perhaps from a blow to the head. Then the world forgot him for 3,000 years. Until 1922, when an Englishman named Howard Carter found his tomb, the only royal tomb in Egypt that grave robbers had never touched. Simeon II, Bulgaria, 1943, age 6. His father, Tsar Boris, came back from a meeting with Hitler in Berlin and died 2 weeks later under circumstances no one could quite explain. 6-year-old Simeon became Tsar. 3 years later, the communists abolished the monarchy and he fled the country. 55 years later, he came back and was elected prime minister of the same Bulgaria that had once exiled him. He remains the only monarch in history to later govern his own country as an elected leader. Louis XIV, France, 1643, age 4. He was 4 when his father died, and his mother began ruling in his name with a cardinal at her side. Once, during a Paris uprising, a mob broke into the palace at night just to make sure the little king was still in his bed. He never forgot it. As a grown man, he would say, "I am the state." And he built Versailles partly to keep every nobleman in France under one roof, where he could watch them. He ruled for 72 years. No European monarch has ever ruled longer. Ivan the Terrible, Russia, 1533, age 3. He was 3 when his father died, 8 when his mother was poisoned. He grew up surrounded by noblemen who killed each other in front of him. They say that as a boy, he threw cats and dogs from the towers of the Kremlin to watch them fall. As a man, he would do the same to people. The history of his reign was written in the blood of his own secret police. King Oyo, Kingdom of Toro, Uganda, 1995, age 3. When his father, the king, died suddenly, 3-year-old Oyo was placed on the throne. During the coronation, he played with his crown, dropped it, and at one point crawled away across the floor to climb back into his mother's lap. He is in his 30s now, has a degree from a British university, and still rules. Guinness World Records lists him as the youngest reigning monarch on Earth. Puyi, China, 1908, age 2. They carried the 2-year-old into the Forbidden City, sat him on the dragon throne, and he began to cry. His father knelt beside him and whispered, "It will all be over soon." 3 years later, an empire that had stood for 2,000 years was gone. Puyi went on living inside the Forbidden City as if it were a museum. Then he was a puppet emperor for the Japanese. Then a war criminal in a Soviet prison. He spent the last years of his life working as a gardener in Beijing. Henry VI, England and France, 1422, age 9 months. His father died of dysentery on a battlefield in France. 2 months later, his grandfather died too, and a 9-month-old baby became the king of 2 countries at once. He is the only person in history to wear both the crown of England and the crown of France by lawful right. As an adult, he would lose his mind, lose France, ignite the Wars of the Roses, and be murdered in the Tower of London. Sobhuza II, Swaziland, 1899, age 4 months. At 4 months old, he was declared king, and his grandmother ruled as regent for the next 22 years until he came of age. Sobhuza would go on to reign for 82 years, longer than any monarch in recorded history. He won independence from Britain. He had 70 wives and more than 200 children. He died at 83. He spent his entire life on the throne, from his first breath to his last. Ivan VI, Russia, 1740, age 2 months. At 2 months old, Ivan was proclaimed emperor of all Russia. A year later, Peter the Great's daughter Elizabeth seized the throne in a palace coup. The baby was taken away and locked up. He was forbidden to speak, to read, to be seen by anyone. He spent 23 years in solitary confinement, never learning his own name, never knowing he had once been a czar. He was killed by his own guards, understanding orders to do so the moment anyone tried to free him. Mary, Queen of Scots, Scotland, 1542, age 6 days. Her father, the King of Scotland, died 6 days after she was born. They say it was grief, after losing a battle to the English. The newborn was declared queen. From his deathbed, the king is said to have whispered, "It came with a lass, and it will go with a lass." He was wrong. Mary lived 44 years. She would become Queen of France, lose her Scottish throne, and end her life on an English execution block by order of her own cousin, Elizabeth I. John I, the Posthumous, France, 1316, born a king. His father, the king, died while the child was still in the womb. All of France held its breath for 5 months, waiting for the birth. If it was a boy, he would be king. If a girl, the crown would pass to another branch of the family. It was a boy. They declared him king in his cradle. He lived 5 days, the shortest reign in the history of France. Alfonso XIII, Spain, 1886, born a king. His father, the King of Spain, died 6 months before he was born. The crown was placed on a cushion, and the country waited. When his mother gave birth, the midwife carried the newborn into the next room, where the ministers of state were waiting, and held him up for them to see. From that second, he was king. The newspapers called him the happiest and best loved of all the rulers of the earth. His reign would end in revolution, in exile, and in a foreign grave. Shapur II, Persia, 309 AD, crowned before birth. When the previous king died, the Sasanian dynasty had no adult heirs left. So the nobles gathered around the bed of his pregnant widow, declared her unborn child king, and placed the crown on her belly. The baby was a boy. They named him Shapur. He would rule for 70 years, longer than any king in Persian history. He would take back from the Romans everything they had taken from him. He would be remembered as Shapur the Great. And it all began with a crown resting on his mother's stomach.